Welcome to our flip lesson on our element of fiction of conflict. This is a very important element of fiction because it's really going to help drive our story forward. While you're watching our flip lesson, you will be taking some Cornell style notes. Notice on the left side of the page, in our Q column, you will be identifying the 6 different types of conflict. They all begin with the phrase individual versus. You'll be writing in the 6 key words of each type of conflict. You'll also be explaining the difference between external conflict and internal conflict. You'll be filling in some blanks there. Now, if we go back above, we'll also notice that we are writing in definitions, but also giving examples. We'll talk about some in this flipped lesson, but if you have some that you can think of on your own that you know fits that type of conflict, you can certainly write those in as well. By the end of our lesson, we're going to focus on reflecting about why conflict is important to a story, and we're going to make sure that you can describe how you know what the main conflict of a story is. All right, so let's talk about conflict. When we refer to conflict, it's the main problem or struggle in a story. Now, stories can have several conflicts, but there is going to be one main type of conflict. This is going to be the one that moves the story forward. The protagonist has this conflict. It's caused by the antagonist, and it's what's going to really focus the plot. So the first type of conflict is individual versus individual, and if you look on the left, you can see our 2 little guys scuffling there. Now, an individual versus individual conflict can be physical, but doesn't have to be. It can also be a conflict of ideas. For example, think political parties. You don't see the presidential candidates getting up and physically fighting each other, but you see them arguing over ideas. That's a type of individual versus individual conflict. You can also have multiple people having an individual versus individual conflict. Groups of people going against other groups of people. Still considered individual versus individual. The next type is individual versus nature. When we're thinking of individual versus nature, we're thinking of problems that involve, for example, the weather. Notice our little guy who's clearly caught in a storm. It might be a survival story. It might be a tornado or a natural disaster. All of those would be caused by nature. Next is individual versus society. Now, when you think society, think rules and think laws. Anytime we go against the expected norms of society, we're having a conflict with society. So think about at school. If you don't follow the dress code, you get in trouble. It's not because a teacher doesn't like you, it's because that you have strayed from the laws of our society at school. If one of your teachers decides to sleep in that day and speeds to work and gets pulled over, they have broken the speeding laws, the traffic laws, so they would be in conflict with society. So when you think society, think social rules and laws. Individual versus supernatural is next. This involves ghosts and ghouls, demons, goblins, creatures that are considered to be not part of our natural world. Next, individual versus technology. I bet some of your teachers demonstrate this for you very often. This is whenever you have a conflict that involves computers or phones, any type of technological device. So for example, when you spend all that time working on that flip lesson and all of a sudden the sound doesn't show up, like what happened to me this year, you have an individual versus technology conflict. Or you've been working, your computer freezes and you forgot to save. Now, we're lucky that Google Docs helps us to prevent many of these conflicts, but they certainly do happen. Now, the last type of conflict is individual versus self. This is whenever your conflict is with inside you. You have to make a decision. You're not sure what to do. Anytime you have a decision where you have to choose between one thing and another, or multiple things, you have an individual versus self conflict. Now, you'll notice that these 6 conflicts can be divided into 2 categories, an external conflict or an internal conflict. External conflicts are all the ones labeled here in blue. These are caused by outside forces. The character does not control his or her own problem. Then you can also have an internal conflict. This is a struggle that takes place in a character's mind or within a character. So whenever a character has a decision to make, this or that, do the right thing, do the wrong thing, or choose between or among many things, it's an internal conflict. So when you think internal conflict, think decision, think choice to make. Now, what I'd like for you to do is to jot down your 5 types of external conflicts. Under the space that says external conflict, you've got some space down there. And then under internal conflict, go ahead and write down individual versus self. For your last part, I'd like you to take a second and reflect on the questions at the bottom. Why conflict is important to story and how you determine the main conflict. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll talk about these later in class.